So, you want to play Vanguard. Tanking, traditionally in most video games, is going to be the least popular and most thankless role that you can pick. You're just the big guy soaking up damage and pulling aggro, while the rest of your team does the fun stuff, right? Well, in Marvel Rivals, the Vanguard role is not that. Everybody wants a Vanguard on their team, but nobody wants to be the Vanguard. This is still true in Marvel Rivals. So maybe you are a strategist and you're thinking, hey, I need to learn a few Vanguards in case we don't get anybody picking Vanguard game after game, and more people are willing to pick strategist than they are Vanguard, and you want to win. Or maybe you are a duelist player and you actually want to start winning games. So you're asking yourself, how should I start playing Vanguard? Playing tank in Marvel Rivals, what is it like? What should I be doing? And honestly, tanking in Rivals isn't a lot like how tanking is in other video games. Right now we have 8 characters, with a 9th coming on the way in Thing, and hopefully more in the future after they're done adding about 20 more DPS. Therefore we have 8 different ways of playing. You can't play one tank like you do another tank. It's just not going to work out for you. So if you want a general rule of how to play Vanguard, people are going to say, oh, soak up damage, soak up aggro, gain space, and pressure them while everyone else does everything. That is just not going to work for you, because not every character can do all those things in the Vanguard role. And you're not going to have the same amounts in every game. You can have between 0 and 6 Vanguards. Obviously, you're not going to have 6. Hell, you're not going to have more than 2 in any game. At least I've never seen one for more than a minute or 2. So you're going to have to learn how you should be playing on every single map as the characters that you want to play in the Vanguard role, as well as who should be good as a solo Vanguard pick and who can be good with another Vanguard, and how do they synergize with that other Vanguard that your teammate has picked. So I obviously recommend to try them all out in the firing range, see what speaks to you, then play them in quick play or competitive, especially if you're still starting out in competitive and losing isn't going to be much of a growing pain for you. The best practice is to actually get your hands dirty and to start doing it. But you need to learn how your character should be played, because there's a lot in this game that isn't intrinsically obvious from the get-go. For instance, a lot of people play Groot completely incorrectly. His giant wall isn't a defense. It should not be thrown up to soak up damage or ward somebody off from the rest of their team. That wall should be placed in a safe place that can't be destroyed, because when you deal damage within its radius, it will give you and the rest of your teammates overhealth. So that is one thing that a lot of people don't intrinsically know that everybody should when playing Groot. Captain America, not a lot of people see as a very strong Vanguard because he's not going to get a ton of kills. His shield isn't fantastic at defense and he's not great at offense. But he actually is good at offense if you can learn all of his animation cancels and what targets to go after, who to harass, and how his ult should be used. It's not a rush in and everybody charge kind of ultimate. It's a support ult. And he is actually an anti-dive tank that should be used to both harass the enemy backline as well as protect your own. Penny is a Vanguard, but almost in name only. She is great at defending a singular position thanks to her spider nest, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with her. So even though some people don't see her as a tank because she has 0 tanking abilities, she actually had the highest win rate than any Vanguard had in the first season of the game. Doctor Strange is your one big shield guy who also has the ability to teleport, which can be super useful, especially if you have any kind of coordination with your team. But big shield doesn't mean he is the best tank, as he hovered at a 50% win rate, sort of in the middle of the pack for the first season of the game. Thor might not seem as fun as exciting as many DPS options and doesn't have a great ultimate, as you're usually not going to get a kill with it, but Thor, with his maneuverability and his damage, is actually going to outkill almost every DPS every single game. So once you find which Vanguard or Vanguards you want to play, you should learn the inside and outs of everything about that character. look up guides, look up secret hidden techniques, animation cancels, tips, as well as things to do with team-ups for those characters. Maybe you want to play Doctor Strange as much as possible, but someone picks Scarlet Witch on your team. Picking Magneto and getting that extra power to do a bunch of chunk damage with that sword blade and doing a bunch of poke that he otherwise couldn't do could be the difference in certain matchups or maps where he might be a better pick thanks solely to that team up. And obviously, Hulk Iron Man team up is the strongest in the entire game, and you're going to want to do that as much as you can while these characters are still some of the strongest ones on the roster. So while yes, a Vanguard does want to soak and absorb damage and gain space, not every character is going to be able to do that, and to the same degree. Doctor Strange is the big shield guy, but nobody else has anything comparable to that. Sure, Cap has a literal shield, but it's going to be very small and not great at protecting outside of diving onto someone who, say, got Groot ulted and throwing a shield up in their face. You're only going to save one person, unless you're ulting, in which case you're saving a lot of people. And Magneto has a really big shield that has infinite health, but it's only going to last a few seconds, and then boom, you're going to be on cooldown. Even if you don't use the whole thing, you still are only going to have a second or two left of it, so you're going to really need to piecemeal that thing out. Every single one of the Vanguards has their own role and what they need to be doing, surely because of what their kit offers. For instance, if you pick Doctor Strange, his ability to fly with the shield is the only counter against a Hela ultimate that otherwise would be raining death and destruction down upon anybody that isn't right next to a support character that's ulting. Captain America is going to be the best Vanguard at protecting your backline from being dove by other tanks or DPS or certain supports who get a little bit too feisty for their role. The enemy Doctor Strange is getting a lot of heals and is just frontlining the hell out of your team. If you're Thor, you can push him away time and time again, separating him from his supports, getting him right next to all of your team so that they can blast through his shields quickly on the side of his shields, or get him down weak enough to where he can be finished off with an ult or something strong, and then you can take care of the rest of the squishies that were helping support him from there. The enemy has a Rocket Raccoon in the backline and is pumping them with 50k heals and 20 revives. There's no way you're going to win that fight if you can't deal with that rocket. If you're somebody like Venom or maybe Cap or Thor, you can fly in, find that BRB station, destroy it, and put some harassment on that rocket. Might not be able to kill him with his maneuverability and great self-heal, but it might give the rest of your team, hopefully with another tank, to be able to deal with the rest of their team so that Rocket's value diminishes quickly. Maybe your team went quad DPS and you only have one person playing support and you don't have a lot of faith in your support abilities. Maybe you want to go Hulk because he's going to be able to survive longer than most of the other tanks are with minimal amount of support. So you dive in, you use your bubbles to keep you and your team alive because there's not going to be a lot of healing to go around, and chunk them down as quickly as you can with all of that damage before your support can find themselves in trouble. Maybe you have a great Thor or Venom harassing the enemy team and you need to do something to help lock down the actual objective, so you pick something like Penny or Groot that can separate people and punish them for their aggression, just trying to get to the point and get away from whatever else is harassing them from your rest of your team. You need to find what tanks work for you and what role they facilitate within the team. Say the enemy has a Punisher going ham on his turret. As Captain America, you can run and flank around without being in danger and then get right up on him with his shield right in front of his turret. That's going to bounce only one direction right back at him, and what used to be a unstoppable killing machine is now outside of his turret and has to deal with a big shield in his face and a guy who can just leap and run away before getting killed. Maybe you have a big offensive ult coming online, but you know that their Luna probably has ult. As Venom, you can harass her or Thor even, and force her to ult for herself. A lot of people want to be greedy and use things solely for themselves. So if you can pressure that out, the rest of your team can do the job. Yes, a lot of these tanks will have to rely on your teammates to pick up the pieces. A lot of them aren't going to be good as a solo tank in every situation on every map against every other kind of team, and some of them are only going to be more useful in closer quarters and don't have really much to do in the poke game. If you pick Venom, you have to be self-reliant, get to those med packs, swing around, cause havoc, and draw out cooldowns. If you're Groot, you have to set up your wall to give your team overhealth and use your little walls to help split the enemy front line from their back line and eliminating them with the quickest of ease and an ultimate that can wipe out entire enemy teams. As Magneto, you're going to be doing a lot of mid-range poke and CC with your alternate fire and using your ultimate to absorb their Star-Lord ults, their Punisher ults, one-shotting their Mantis or their Luna using their ult. Magneto is one of the rare ultimates that can deal with all of those huge threats. Captain America, especially as a second tank, is going to be your best character at using a support ultimate when you don't have a supporter's ultimate online, keeping them alive from an enemy ult. Say Eye of Agamotto gets popped, you throw out your Liberty Rush and you give them healing while putting a shield up on their face that as their Doctor Strange is trying to finish them off, and Eye of Agamotto gets 0 value. As Hulk, he's going to be a great solo tank because his ability to stay alive is going to be unparalleled with the least amount of support that maybe your team just doesn't have in that game. Thor is going to be a huge bully, pushing the enemy away, dividing them, making them split their resources and keeping themselves alive, trying to go after you or go after the enemy team. Penny Parker is always going to find some success, being the #1 win rate tank in both quick play and competitive for Season 0, because people don't know you have to destroy her nest. Otherwise, she's going to completely rule that game because of the damage those mines do. And the ability to hold down a singular corner in any map can provide ginormous value, especially when you set up a big nest with a lot of mines and a lot of webs and then pop her ult to where those mines are going to be able to find and seek and destroy anything that is in their purview. So I wouldn't say it's merely an idea of picking what's the meta tank. Every tank is serviceable right now. You even had the worst performing tank last year in Venom get a couple of buffs to help him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he even got more in the future. Captain America is a very difficult to use tank because you have to know all of the different animation cancels and combos that go with him that can utilize his power to his greatest effectiveness, where he didn't have a large win rate because not a lot of people knew how to play him, but those that did, like myself, racked up quite a lot of wins. I've actually only ever lost once with him. And while Doctor Strange can do a ton of kills and not die when he gets the right team, if he doesn't get the right team, he might be less useful than any other tank in the game. If the enemy team has the right thing to shred your shields or your teammates just aren't with you, then that big old shield is going to be all for naught. You'd be better off playing Hulk or Thor or Groot. Every tank has a situation where they can be highly effective based on the matchup, based off of the map and game mode, and based off of what the rest of your team has. Do we have another Vanguard? Do we have supports that are good at healing? Because certain characters are just not going to be good without their support. Certain characters aren't going to be good at certain ranges. Certain characters aren't going to be nearly as good as the only Vanguard on their team. So while it might not always work out, having 1 or 2 Vanguards in your team is always going to increase your probability of winning the game. So play the Vanguards, see which ones are right for you, and master them. Look up the videos of those top players and see what they do. Their combos, their situational things, because the Vanguard role isn't just one trick pony that all of them do sort of the same thing. Currently, none of them really step on each other's toes. No other tank does what Penny Parker does. No other tank does what Groot does. No other tank does what Doctor Strange does. You can say that about any of the tanks. None of them do what the others do. They all have their own role, and you need to learn how to play each one of them appropriately. Learning one does not learn all of them. Hell, it doesn't even learn a second one. So learn a couple, that's really all you need. Try them all out, see what works for you, and see which ones you might be tempted to switch to when a great team up becomes available. And once you start cooking on Vanguard, you're gonna start seeing your win rate skyrocket and have a lot more fun. Because I'm telling you guys, Vanguard, when you have a little bit of help, is way more fun than tanking is in any other game.